Hello. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and your art practice?
Yeah, well, first, my name is Clayton Campbell. I'm living currently in Philadelphia, and I want to thank the Belgrade Art Studio for what's been a really nice experience and having been invited into the residency. And thank you, Bax, uh, uh, for being part of this with us. Um, Throughout my practice, I've focused on photo-based art. I've been an artist all my life. Um, and I guess, if I have an artist statement, what I would say is that we live in a time of intense creative, spiritual, social, technological, and environmental change. And my practice responds to these transformations by making art that explores the behavior of people who find themselves in extraordinary circumstances. I believe in nonviolence and nonviolence philosophy, and it's always influenced my creative work. And the practice of peace and reconciliation is one of the most vital and artistic of human actions. And I've tried to live a life where I've done something for others, and this is reflected in my work. So this is really a kind of humanistic statement. It's in terms of a more formal statement about my practice. I work a lot with digital art. I've started in 1995 when I was given my first digital camera, but I was trained as a painter in Vienna, Austria in the late 1960s. And but I always had a camera. I grew up in and around New York. I was part of the pictures generation. I worked with Xerox art, all kinds of technological stuff with photo-based and text-image-based work, and have arrived here in 2023 now working with AI generative work. And what intrigued me about this residency was the theme, artists on standby, and what isolation meant to people in particular, and what the consequences of it were.
And can you tell us about your project? What are you working on during this residency? As you mentioned that the theme intrigued you, probably have a bit more to say about the whole thing.
Well, I worked with a number of online residencies, designing them for different artist organizations and getting them up and running at the beginning of the pandemic, because this is what organizations pivoted to in the absence of having physical residencies, because people just couldn't do them. And they've led to sustainable residencies that now occur regularly, because this is a really great way to interact with people. Yet at the same time, as practitioners, we did find ourselves, at home, many of us isolated from the normal interactions, which we, had become accustomed to. I found myself, as a longtime practitioner, really having to investigate my own thought processes, and how I was becoming really aware that my thought patterns were looping or repeating themselves. I have a meditation practice, and in that practice, which is part of my overall practice as an artist, I became aware that I was repeating thoughts, and kind of caught in a kind of mind stream, or what's called a trance of thought, where you get locked into a kind of pattern of thinking that just sort of loops on itself. and it's very hard to break that. And it can become kind of inbred and dysfunctional. So it's very much a reflection of social patterning and kind of how you see how you see actions in the outside world just repeating themselves over and over, how constant wars, constant conflict, and there never seems to be any resolution. So I became curious about that. I wanted to, with this project for Artists on Standby, imagine that I was having a conversation with myself. So I started having a conversation with ChatGPT in the absence of having anyone to talk to. And that's been my project. Long conversations with artificial intelligence, which, that was not available during the pandemic, but it is now. And there have been some very surprising results. Kind of reminds me of talking to the computer HAL in the movie 2001, where it starts to come to life. And ChatGPT has, in my case, also had some very surprising answers that, it started to humanize as we have gone along. But it is, kind of a kind of sort of a test case where I've been developing images along with the conversation and posting them on my project site as we go along, not waiting till the end of the residency. So it's been a process, and a really interesting one.
You included some of the works of the other residents who are involved in the residency to create some of the GIFs. And what is the process with creating a GIF besides like the whole thing you have with ChatGPT nowadays?
Well, do you mean some of the GIFs? I made some GIFs with two of the other artists. Yes. I just, as an experiment, they sent me some of their images, and I work digitally. I make digital art working in layers, primarily through Photoshop, but I can use other applications. So I built some of their artwork into the layering, and then turned the final Photoshop production into GIFs, and then turn them into MP4 files or movies. And it was interesting. These were not actually collaborations because I was the one controlling the final image, but they were sort of conversations using their work. So I tried this with two of the other artists in the residency as an experiment. They both found it kind of interesting. It's not really part of my project, but it was a nice crossover in the residency, and it's kind of a nice collegial thing that happened.
How do you see arts in future, and what are some of your future plans? Do you have anything coming up soon, or you're just like waiting for things to happen?
Well, I am more interested. I'm interested because of the way my work is designed as large digital productions, that they should be in the public arena, not so much in kind of the conventional art world settings like galleries. I'd like to see them in public spaces like airports, train stations, billboards on the street, LED screens, things that are backlit. My work is meant to create conversations, particularly at a moment when the intensity of the suffering in the world is at a level that is unlike anything I've seen in my lifetime. And also when a lot of countries, including the United States, are taking a swing to the hard right politically. And, this is something artists really should be doing something about. It threatens our personal freedoms and particularly our creative freedom. And so I am developing a business plan to, get my work out into the public arena, and have my work out in a place where it will be seen by a much larger public, not the usual art-going public that is sort of preaching to the choir, but the public that needs to be thinking about more than just how they get through the day, but what's coming, what's happening around them, that they can have an effect, a positive effect on, the big changes that are occurring in the world, and they can have it right there in their own community. That's important to me with the time I have left in my career, to do something that matters, make a difference without creating political art, but maybe something that has a measure of social commentary to it, that creates really a conversation that includes more people. That's where I plan to be going with my work. And it really fits kind of what I said at the very top of this, Bax, which is sort of what my artist statement is. It's really a humanistic mission statement rather than a formal kind of academic art mission where I talk about the formality of the making of my work and reference art sources. I mean, I could do that, but only a handful of people who have gone to art school would understand it. I really want my work to be accessible to a much larger audience that is interested in culture, but speaks a very different language, kind of the common language that you and I would just share over a cup of coffee, kind of thing. So that's where my work is going. In terms of the actual art making, I'm really kind of invested right now in getting better at my tools, learning to get better at my use of my digital tools, and where I just get stuck, I'm collaborating a lot with younger practitioners who are true digital natives, who were born into this, who are just better at it than me, and collaborating with them, who can take maybe an idea I have and then say, hey, look, let's run with it a lot further. And we'll just share authorship. So that's something else I'm doing, is to really more collaborations and take things further. That's why I like the residencies, frankly. I think the online residencies, and I applaud you for doing them, is you get in touch with people you'd never meet otherwise. Really important.
Thank you, Clayton, and I wish you luck with everything, with all the ideas and the projects in the future.